Hello, friends, and welcome back to our second lesson in our Enjoying and Respecting Nature series. Today, we're going to be talking a little bit more about the natural world. What does that term natural world mean? Well, if you ask me, it means nature, all the things that are outside, that are natural, that are part of our world. And do you guys know what the term respect means? Respect means to honor or think highly of something and act in ways that honor it. So when we talk about respecting the natural world and respecting nature, it means to appreciate all that it provides for us and recognize its power, as well as to take care of it. So I want to read you a story this morning called A Stormy Adventure. Squirrel leapt from the branch of her tree, landed lightly on the branch of a neighboring tree, circled the trunk twice, and reached the ground with her tail high in the air, her nose sniffing the breeze for danger. Running across the ground, she skirted around a big rock, dashed under the low branches of the juniper, keeping her eye on her goal, the strawberry patch. She paused to survey the area, then quickly grabbed a ripe strawberry and ate it. She picked a second berry and ran back towards the tree with it in her teeth. Squirrel ran up the trunk of her tree and didn't pause until she popped into the hole on the north side. There she dropped the strawberry in the middle of 4 little babies. They were just beginning to eat more than just their mother's milk, and they all went for the strawberry eagerly. But one berry was not enough to feed 4 hungry squirrels, even baby ones. Squirrel dashed out of the nest again and headed back to the strawberry patch. The pine tree where they had their home provided many tasty pine cones, and there were other trees nearby that provided nuts for the squirrel family. Squirrel could sit in her tree high above the ground and see for miles around. Today she sat out on the branch near the nest and sniffed the air. It was cooler than usual, and the clouds gathered in the east. If a storm was coming, it was important to gather more food. The storm hit in the evening. The wind came first, moving the grasses and then the branches of the trees as it gained strength. The birds flew out of the storm's path or hid in their nests, while Squirrel and her babies stayed in their cozy home in their tree. When the rain started, it was getting dark. Rain and wind howled outside while Squirrel held her babies close. Occasionally, she would poke her nose out of the nest and smell the air, but she knew it was not the time to leave her babies alone. The storm was a violent one. The tree was bending and shaking in the wind so much that Squirrel was afraid they would be knocked out of the nest. The little ones squeaked, and she fed them, putting her body between them and the opening to the dangerous world outside. While her babies slept, Squirrel listened to the storm, alert and poised for action. The wind was howling fiercely when it suddenly changed direction. The tall pine tree that was able to bend with the wind, its branches brushing the ground, was wrenched around and pushed violently the other way, snapping in the middle where the stress was too much for the tree to handle. The trunk split in a loud noise, and then the broken tree hit the ground with a crash. Squirrel found herself on the wet ground close to the opening of the nest, which was now lying in the middle of many broken branches. She was unhurt and quickly jumped into the nest to check on her babies. 2 of them squeaked at her in the darkness. 2 of them were missing. Squirrel went into action immediately. She sniffed the air and called to her babies in her mother's squirrel voice, but the wind and rain howled, and her voice was lost in the noise. She started searching in the dark, feeling along the ground and continuing to call. After a short time, she found one baby under a fallen branch, wet and scared, but not hurt. She picked it up and carried it back to the nest and put it with the others. Then she went out again to find the 4th. This one had fallen much further and was blindly crawling around in the dark, calling for its mother. Squirrel was thorough in her search, gradually going further from the tree, checking every inch of ground, but it was difficult with so many branches down and the rain falling hard. She finally got close enough to hear the baby's cries and carried it back through the rain to the rest of the family. They stayed in the fallen tree until morning, keeping each other warm. Squirrel was up with the sun in the clear, calm morning. The storm was gone, but the broken tree and the piles of branches on the ground told of the night's adventures. She fed her babies and checked each of them thoroughly for injuries before going out in search of a new nest. Luckily, the branches did a pretty good job of hiding the opening to the old nest while she went in search of a new home. It wasn't very long before she found a safe spot high in another pine tree overlooking the strawberry patch. She carried each baby there and settled them in. Then Squirrel leapt from the branch of her tree, landed lightly on the branch of a neighboring tree, circled the trunk twice, and reached the ground with her tail high in the air, and sniffed the breeze before grabbing another strawberry. Have you ever been in a storm like the one that Squirrel was in? Were you scared? How else did you feel? Sometimes when things like storms happen, we have a lot of different kinds of feelings. Sometimes we're scared, sometimes we might feel anxious, or we might just feel awe at how neat the storm is. The thunder and the lightning are sometimes pretty cool when you think about the science behind it. What do you think other animals do during storms? Do you think there's any way that storms could be possibly helpful? If you found a baby animal that was separated from its mother, what do you think the best thing to do would be? We are part of nature. We are connected to nature. Storms can show us how powerful nature is and how it affects us directly. Can you think of other ways that nature shows its power? Some ideas that I had were forest fires, waves, waterfalls, tornadoes, avalanches. But also, little things can be really powerful too, like when a chick hatches its way out of an egg, or when a tiny sprout grows up in a crack in the pavement. Those are also ways that nature are powerful, but sometimes we don't see those as much because they're so small. Let's make some squirrel art to remind us about how powerful nature is and about how the squirrel in our Stormy adventure story handled that storm in all its power and provided for her family. So I have this squirrel art picture that you might have gotten if you got one of our communion bags. If you don't have one of these, just a blank piece of paper that you can draw a squirrel on is perfect for this activity. I also have a scissors and a stapler. And if you want to color your squirrel, you can color it any way you want, any colors you want. And then you're going to want some kind of paper for the tail. A piece of construction paper, or I'm going to use a paper bag. The first thing that I'm going to do is cut my bag approximately the same length as my tail, about 4 inches or so. And then I'm going to fold it in half. You can make your tail as big and bushy as you want, or you can make it thin, depending on what kind of material you choose to make your squirrel with. You may need more layers of that material, or you may need fewer layers of that material. So I'm going to cut my bag in little strips like this. And I'm going to open it. I'm going to cut some of this off. It's a little too long. And I'm going to kind of run my fingernails down them. This is going to make my squirrel tail kind of curly looking. Then I'm going to cut some of this extra paper off from around my squirrel. You can cut right on the line. You can cut just kind of a bubble around your squirrel. That's what I'm doing right now. It's totally up to you. It's your squirrel art, so you can do this however you choose. If you wanted to glue your squirrel to another piece of paper after you attach the tail, that would be fun too. So then I'm going to take my tail that I made and stick it right over the tail on the squirrel. And then you're going to want to attach it. I'm going to staple it, but you could also use a glue stick. Alright, once I get it attached, I'm going to fluff my squirrel tail a little more. And there is my squirrel. You can put as many layers of paper on the tail as you want. You can color in your squirrel any colors that you want. You can glue this to another piece of paper. Put this somewhere that you can see it, that reminds you of nature and how powerful nature can be and how we are part of that power. As we talk about how powerful nature is, I want to read to you from Genesis, a scripture that illustrates a little bit about nature's power. This is from Genesis chapter 7, verses 11 through 24. In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the second month, on the 17th day of the month, on that day all of the fountains of the great deep burst forth, and the windows of heaven were opened. The rain fell on earth for 40 days and 40 nights. On the very same day, Noah with his sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and Noah's wife and the 3 wives of his sons entered the ark, they and every kind of wild animal, and all domestic animals of every kind, and every creeping thing that creeps on earth, and every bird of every kind, every bird, every winged creature. They went into the ark with Noah, 2 and 2 of all flesh, which there was breath of life. And those that entered, male and female of all flesh, went in as God had commanded them, and the Lord shut them in. The flood continued 40 days on earth, and the waters increased and bore up the ark, and it rose high above the earth. The waters swelled and increased greatly on the earth, and the ark floated in the face of the waters. The waters swelled so mightily on the earth that all the high mountains under the whole heaven were covered. The waters swelled above the mountains, covering them 15 cubits deep. And all flesh died that moved on earth, birds, domestic animals, wild animals, all swarming creatures that swarm on the earth, and all human beings. Everything on dry land, in whose nostrils had breath of life, died. He blotted out every living thing that was on the face of the ground, human beings and animals and creeping things and birds of the air. They were blotted out from the earth. Only Noah was left and those that were with him on the ark, and the waters swelled on the earth for 150 days. This story from Genesis is a story from the Bible. It's about a big flood, isn't it? And it's the reason that we tell this story is to warn against the power of nature, and about Noah, who was chosen to go on that ark with all the animals because he was a noble and good man. Think with me about how much power is needed to break a tree, like the tree in our squirrel story. Could 3 strong people do it? Would it take more? What would it take? Can you think of examples of natural activities that have a lot of power? Some examples that I thought of are rivers, waterfalls, and sunshine. The power in nature can be destructive, like in the storm or the flood, but the power in nature also makes things grow and change. The power in the sun gives us light and gives flowers life. Now I invite you to close our lesson by sitting quietly. Focus on your breathing and your heartbeat. Place your hand on your chest. Feel your heart beating. The energy and the power that flows through your body comes from the same source as all the energy in the natural world. We are co-creators and we share the same source of energy. We are nature, and when we respect nature, we also respect and honor our own lives. Say this with me. I love and take care of my earth home. Thanks for joining me. I will see you soon for lesson number 3.